Coming up next on Live at 5.
More than 24 hours after a massive fire destroyed this historic building, we're watching as investigators are digging through piles of rubble to look for evidence. But neighbors tell me about the last 4 years they've watched this building deteriorate. Coming up.
KSL Live at 5 starts now.
Arson investigators are trying to figure out what sparked this massive fire that destroyed a historic church building.
This is the Wells Ward, and it was scheduled to be demolished very soon before this fire broke out. News specialist Shelby Lofton joins us live from the Meeting House in the Liberty Wells neighborhood.
Shelby, they're planning to demolish this today?
Debbie, that's what I was told by the Salt Lake City Fire Department, but clearly that has not happened quite yet. They said they wanted it to start today, possibly into tomorrow. Take a look. We're seeing an excavator parked on the property, but neighbors said they're not so sure they're going to see demolition anytime soon because this excavator has been here for some time. The fire department told me they're just waiting on the contractor at this point. And I've been here on the ground since this morning watching arson investigators walk the grounds, pry open doors, and study piles of rubble. There's also been a dog out here sniffing, likely for traces of accelerant. Fire officials said this building was fully engulfed around 5:30 yesterday morning when crews arrived. It took nearly 85 firefighters to put it out. And people in this neighborhood knew this building was going to be flattened in the coming days, but they told me it's hard to see it go this way. They said the Meeting House has sat in disrepair the last 4 years, ever since the Magna earthquake left it structurally unsafe. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints owns this building. They put up a fence around the lot, but neighbors said that did not stop people from breaking in. Spots where the building has collapsed show a lot of tagging inside.
The homeless problem is everywhere, and nobody knows a solution, and so especially when it was cold in winter, you know, people needed to survive, and they'd go in there.
Luter said neighbors often had to call the police to have large groups of people removed from this building. And we have records from police that indicate just how many times they had to come to this building over the last 4 years. Coming up on KSL-5 News at 6, I'll dig into just how many times callers made those reports and what exactly police had to deal with inside here. For Live at 5, I'm Shelby Lofton.
Freedom has never been guaranteed.
All coming up in the 7-day forecast.
All right, Kevin, thank you. Developing tonight, an attempted robbery leads to shots fired and ended in a crash in Sandy. This ended at the scene near 122 East and Sega Lily Drive. Investigators say it started in a parking lot near the shops at Southtown, where suspects tried to rob the victims, who then chased after them. And at some point, police say the suspects fired shots at the victims, missed, and then ended with this crash. The victims were in the red car. Police are still looking for the suspects. News specialist Andrew Adams is on the scene gathering details, and he'll have an update tonight on KSL-5 News at 10. Near the Utah-Arizona, are now investigating what happened. A nearly 100-year-old church is set to be demolished any minute after a fire left it in ruins. Firefighters rescued 2 people from the flames yesterday inside the Wells Ward Meeting House.
News specialist Shelby Lofton joins us live from there now. And Shelby, do we know anything about how this might have started?
Debbie, at this point, we know that Salt Lake City Fire's arson unit is leading this investigation. And as far as those 2 people that you just mentioned who were rescued, they're being considered patients right now. Firefighters told me that unless their investigation says otherwise, they're just treating them as patients. But neighbors I spoke to today said it's not uncommon for people to be found inside this building who really shouldn't be.
But it's been 4 years, it's been sitting there.
People living in the Liberty Wells neighborhood say the Wells Ward building has been a sad sight the last few years. A massive fire that destroyed the church makes it even more painful for Amy Luter to look at.
It was interesting that just before it's supposed to be demolished, that a fire started.
The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints closed the building after the 2020 earthquake left it unstable.
It's been fenced off and nothing was done to it.
Salt Lake City police records show there were reports of people inside trespassing. In 2021, someone reported a theft from the property. In 2022, 5 calls were made for various property offenses. The next year, 6 callers reported trespassing, burglary, or vandalism.
There's a lot of graffiti, just a lot of messiness.
And this year, a handful of trespassing reports.
The police have had to take out big groups of people with all their stuff several times.
Neighbors off camera described the property as a drug den. The church did not directly respond to questions about the decision and timeline of demolishing the building. They also did not confirm if stained glass windows or other artifacts from the church had been saved.
A few weeks ago, they brought the excavator in and they were, I don't know what they were doing.
Luter says she and her neighbors have wondered what the church building's fate would be, and this fire is not what they imagined.
I've just been kind of waiting to see if anything was going to get done.
Now, that investigation does look like it's underway all day today. I've seen people in uniform coming in and out of this building. I've also seen a dog walking the ground sniffing for possibly traces of accelerant. We just don't know what their findings are quite yet. As for this demolition, the fire department said they'd hope to get it completed today, but so far nothing has started here. Hopefully it will start tomorrow so they can continue on in their investigation. I'll send it back to you.
All right, we'll keep an eye on the signs of progress. Shelby, thanks.
It's the end of an era in River.
You're watching KSL News at 6.
An iconic statue of Martha Hughes Cannon will soon leave Utah. Cannon was Utah's first female state senator and a pioneer in women gaining the right to vote.
News specialist Lindsay Aerts joins us now with more on where she will be going. Lindsay.
Yeah, this statue of Martha Hughes Cannon that sits on the 3rd floor of the Utah State Capitol will soon be headed to Washington, D.C. Each state gets 2 statues to represent it, and she will soon sit alongside Brigham Young.
It's a really big deal for the state of Utah.
If you've walked the halls of the Utah State Capitol anytime in about the last 4 years, then you've likely seen this iconic pioneering woman.
She fought for women's rights, women's voting rights in particular. She was a doctor, a physician.
She was the first female elected into a state senate as a state senator.
But on June 5th, this statue of Martha Hughes Cannon will take a new journey to Washington, D.C., stepping into her new home in the U.S. Capitol's Hall of Statues to represent Utah. She'll replace Philo Farnsworth, the inventor of the electronic TV, and stand together with Brigham Young.
We want Utah's women's suffrage history to be acknowledged nationwide.
It is very important to recognize, Utah's leadership in that back during that time.
Lieutenant Governor Deidre Henderson and 1st District Representative Blake Moore say women in America have the right to vote because of women like Cannon, who was a leading voice to challenge the status quo. She also beat out her husband to be elected to Utah's state senate.
Once she helped other women earn a voice in their state government, she showed them how to be a representative in their state government.
And for Henderson, she's hoping that Cannon's statue, placed where the nation will see, will continue to serve as a blueprint for American women.
Utah women were far ahead of their time, and that's a fact that's often overlooked and missed out on in the rest of the country today. And it's time that we reclaim our history.
Now, this statue will travel by truck across the country. There will be a public party, a public send-off on June 5th. Reporting at the state capitol, I'm Lindsay Aerts for KSL-5 News.
Thank you, Lindsay. Go Martha. Today marks the start of the 100 deadliest days on Utah roads. The stretch from Memorial Day to Labor Day is when we see an uptick in the number of traffic deaths. Last summer, 85 people died during that stretch, which was actually a significant improvement over 2022. Last year, UHP troopers made 40,000 traffic stops.
Where everything stands right now.
But first, a car chase through the streets of Sandy ends in a precarious crash. But the most disturbing thing is what happened on the road.
KSL News at 10 starts now.
Good evening. Police are looking for suspects tonight after gunfire and a crash caught a Sandy neighborhood by surprise.
News specialist Andrew Adams was the only reporter on the scene this afternoon and learned this was a concerning chain of events to investigators. Andrew.
Well, it was, Debbie. Police say that It started as a robbery in this parking lot, and then the victims decided to chase the robbers. It ended in a potentially dangerous situation next to some high-density apartments and condos.
It's pretty tucked away back in here.
In an out-of-the-way place.
Our window actually looks right out at it.
There was suddenly an out-of-place car.
I'm like, holy cow, there's a car down in the ditch. I didn't know if it went into the building or not.
The quiet of a Memorial Day afternoon had been interrupted by gunfire and a crash that caught the neighborhood by surprise.
Usually we hear cars coming by that are super loud and make that kind of noise anyway.
Nobody could take their eyes off the crime scene.
It looks like a Charger. It's got the Mopar orange, yeah.
Steve Wilds was among the many.
I was like, okay, what's going on?
Left with questions for Sandy police.
It was taking place in the parking lot is what I understand.
Investigators tell KSL it started just blocks away with an apparent robbery.
The victims of the robbery are the ones that are in the red vehicle.
Yes.
They began following after the robbery had happened. Someone from the suspect vehicle shot at the victim vehicle.
Police say the robbery victims somehow ended up crashing.
We're not sure exactly what happened, how the vehicle came to arrest.
As officers look for those responsible, they're urging victims of crimes like these not to take matters into their own hands.
No, if they're trying to rob me, I wouldn't have chased them because that was more likely going to happen than not.
Neighbors were in disbelief over how ugly this ended.
Shocking that something like this would happen like right across the street from us.
The police say fortunately nobody was injured by the gunfire or in the crash. They're still looking for the suspects, but they don't believe there's an immediate danger to the public. Back to you.
All right, scary situation all the way around. Andrew Adams live for us. Andrew, thanks.
New tonight, a close call for a UHP.